When Chris Claremont was creating Gambit, it feels like he was on, like, whose line is it anyway? Yeah, I need a location. Louisiana, okay, great, sounds good. And I need an object? Playing card, great. I think I heard bow staff, we'll do both. Awesome, thank you. Now I need a name. Gambit. Okay, we'll roll with that. A little weird, but we can do it, I think. And admittedly, Gambit is kind of a weird character, but also incredibly cool and iconic at the same time. And that makes him a quintessential X-Men character, right? Weird, silly, and cool as hell. That's their whole jam. And of course, if you've been watching X-Men 97, you know that he's done the coolest thing on screen or page that he's probably ever done. So this week, I'm celebrating one of my favorite X-Men of all time, Remy LeBeau, Gambit. Stick around. I'm Dan Umpton, and this is the Doomcast. Alright, do me a favor, hit subscribe and the bell. I make about one of these videos a week. They're all great, so please don't miss even one. Also, next week, I'm headed to C2E2, and I'm going to be bringing some graded books with me. And there's nothing handier than a sleek, protected carrying case from Comic Shell. And it's now twice as big as the original Comic Shell, with a nice little handle and a pretty smooth zipper. It's perfect for transporting graded and non-graded books to a convention or anywhere else. Yeah, I know, it's a 5.0, but you know what? It's my 5.0. Anyway, check them out at comicshell.com. Gambit debuted in Uncanny X-Men 266 after a cameo in Uncanny X-Men 265 by Chris Claremont and Jim Lee. Gambit was an instantly popular character and tremendously well received, with a power set that is incredibly unique. Admittedly, Gambit's mutant power allows him to charge any object he physically touches with kinetic energy, which will allow it to explode in a bright pink light after a short period of time, which will eventually happen to Mike Pence, I'm sure. The upper limit of what he can charge in terms of size and explosion has varied in depiction, but generally he uses smaller objects like playing cards as thrown explosive weapons, other items of high durability like his bow staff, or theoretically other adamantium objects like, say, Wolverine's claws, could potentially be charged and the energy created explode off of them without the object itself exploding. It's also worth noting that my man had one of the sickest hyper combos in Marvel vs. Capcom 2, unquestionably one of my favorites to pull off. That's to say that his powers are somewhat inconsistent in depiction and a little silly because that's not how kinetic energy works. Obviously, you don't explode when you skateboard down a hill or fall off of a building. Actually, you kind of do explode when you fall off of a building, never mind. Anyway, in his first appearance, he rescues a young Storm who has been reverted to a powerless kid, please don't ask, from the clutches of the Shadow King, while both were trying to steal a set of paintings. Gambit was raised in the Thieves Guild as a Quinzo Ocha, the White Devil. Just kidding, not a Quinzo Ocha. They literally called him Diablo Blanc. Although for real, which is very funny to me. His real name is Remy LeBeau, which is also kind of funny. And his costume was a hot pink shirt, black pants with pink stripes, cerulean shin guards, gloves, and a giant trench coat. The gloves only had his ring and middle fingers covered, which looks cool, but as a thief, that's a questionable choice, right? You're leaving fingerprints everywhere. Gambit also had a history with the Morlocks and Marauders, and of course, that means Mr. Sinister, as he was retconned into being present at the Mutant Massacre in Uncanny X-Men 210, in which he rescued a young Marrow from Sabretooth. Remy became a favorite X-Man upon joining, and of course became very close, or as close as he could get, to Rogue, which became a defining theme of their relationship. Despite Rogue having been introduced much earlier, and a brief flirtation of a relationship with Magneto predicated on her early history with him and the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, Gambit got solidly shipped with Rogue, and after the X-Men animated series and the X-Men comic book launch in 1991, they kicked off an official relationship in X-Men number 24. It's strange how much of this era of X-Men also kind of got influenced by the animated series and the comics and TV sharing with one another, but it's also wild to think that Gambit was on TV and a cartoon character within 2 years of his first appearance. By the time the films came out, Gambit's popularity hadn't really waned, but he had been somewhat sidelined except for Claremont's Extreme X-Men. He remained, however, a fan favorite character, and they even made a movie with him starring Channing Tatum. Oh, wait, that didn't actually happen at all, because Channing Tatum is exactly who I know we all envision when we think of somebody who could portray Gambit. A Cajun good old boy, we of course think of Magic Mike. I am so glad that that movie didn't happen with Channing Tatum. Nothing against Channing Tatum, it just would have been real weird. Like, even the cartoon character voice for Gambit doesn't really make sense, because as a lore-accurate Cajun, he would sound something like a cross between Rob Schneider and Boomhauer from King of the Hill. Nobody could understand a single word that he said. It would be relying entirely on Gene to share a psychic rapport with the entire team, because if he even opened his mouth, people would be like, sorry, what? Easily the most unintelligible American English dialect. Speaking of Apocalypse, after M-Day in comics, he sought out Apocalypse to try and create a coalition and truce, and willingly allowed Apocalypse to make him a Horseman of Death, hoping that he would retain his resolve, but the Death Seed made him a servant of Apocalypse anyhow. He eventually regained his personality, but his Horseman of Death persona still technically is embedded inside of him, I believe, and has re-manifested on a few other occasions on which he's attempted to, for example, steal Limbo from Magic in X-Men Hellbound during the Second Coming / Hope storyline. Also, at some point in there, he was briefly a Summers brother, but fortunately I think that was retconned, because that's also silly as hell. Gambit was also present in the Utopia era of X-Men and the AVX storyline as well. During X-Men Gold, at the wedding, or intended wedding, of Peter and Kitty Pryde. After Kitty left Peter at the altar, Gambit then proposed to Rogue, and then they got married right there, with the rabbi that was going to preside over the wedding of Colossus and Shadowcat. Only in the X-Men, or possibly in Williamsburg, will you see two Southerners get married who are otherwise irreligious by a rabbi. Absolutely incredible. Anyway, during the Krakoan era, he joined Apocalypse and Excalibur and was involved in adventures mostly in Otherworld alongside Rogue and Richter. During Knights of X, he was briefly killed off and then resurrected in a way that frankly annoyed the crap out of me and made him feel like he was kind of treated like an ancillary character, but I appreciated him being anywhere at all during the Krakoan era. It's kind of annoying how much he got sidelined. However, Stephanie Phillips, Rogue, and Gambit highlighted their relationship and had them running errands for Destiny, and actually included, if I recall correctly, a jambalaya or gumbo recipe. Not sure which. Gonna warn folks right now, spoilers for X-Men 97. Turn this off, watch the rest of it later. Honestly, if you're not watching it, what is wrong with you? It is so good that it made the anti-woke stop complaining, because it's so good they can't deny how good it actually is. Anyway, there are spoilers coming, so turn it off. Despite, or perhaps because of, X-Men 97 putting Gambit in a very thirsty half-shirt, this whole show has made him on point in a way that he's never been depicted on screen before, including the original animated series. This show has showcased uses of his mutant powers that are wild as hell. You know how I mentioned that the scale of his powers canonically has fluctuated? Well, Episode 5 has the mutants return to Genosha to see the beginnings of a mutant culture and government. We get cameos from a ton of people. Multiple Man, Exodus, Glob Herman, Pixie, Nature Girl, Dazzler, way more also, but Gambit stole the episode like the thief that he is. After agreeing to not interfere in whatever decision Rogue makes and promising to always be friends with her as she explores a relationship with Magneto, a Tri-Sentinel attacks Genosha, destroying a lot of it, reminiscent of the Cassandra Nova event in Grant Morrison's X-Men, where 16 million mutants were killed on Genosha while Magneto ruled it. In this instance, a lot of mutants are killed, it would seem, including Magneto, probably a lot of others. But when it seems like this thing can't be stopped, even by Rogue, Gambit makes a last-ditch attempt to charge it with a staff strike, but an arm comes out, impales him, giving him just enough time to kinetically charge the whole thing, even as he's dying, telling it, "My name is Gambit. Remember it," before exploding along with the Sentinel, which is the hardest way to go out if you have to, but it's also, at this point, X-Men 97 got that Game of Thrones cred at this point, right? All of your favorite characters are now on the table, okay? Anyone can die, and it's not just about storylines and cameos that we hope to see anymore. It's about your favorite characters even surviving, and it makes me very frustrated that Gambit was the one that had to take the L, not the L, the win. I mean, going out like an actual G, capital G Gambit, but at the same time, why was he on the chopping block? I don't know. But that makes this probably the best Marvel on-screen media since Infinity War or the Daredevil Netflix show, because it is real raw and anything can happen. But at the cost of our boy, right? But if they're going where I hope, eventually, I think they're going to end up doing the Crack Cohen storyline. So I think there's a good chance that we will see him and a lot of other people again, and a lot of other people that we haven't seen yet. So that's awesome. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I know this was long. Do me a favor, hit subscribe. I've got maybe one more video coming this week, if not next week. But yeah, a lot of the next few episodes are going to be very X-Men centric. Thanks for watching. This has been the Doomcast. Peace.